uploading again. What? What do you mean I'm uploading again? But no. This week, or I should rather say, this is more draft league content. This is singles, after one draft community, EDC for short. Overall, really good community. I like it. I had a lot of fun. Last season I had fun. This season I'm planning to have some fun. Right now I'm playing in the Origin division, which is the highest division. Yeah. So I'm really just excited for a good challenge, you know? Test my mentality and just improvise, adapt, and overcome, right? So let's just jump right into the week one team building, where I'm facing Yggdrasil, a new French player who is pretty good, according to the from what I've heard. So I gotta be on the lookout for that. And a little bit nervous, but ultimately it's whatever, right? I just gotta do what I gotta do. And my team consists, or his team consists of Lopunny, Melmetal, Nidoking, Azumarill, Tyranitar, Dracozolt, Volcanion, Serena, and Uxie. Overall, very offensive team, can definitely punch a lot of holes in my not-so-defensive team. And yeah, that's really scary. And my team, over here on the left, but I'm just gonna keep it here for future reference, just so I have the matchups on display for you guys to see. And I'll just go over it really quick, what everything should do and how it rolls. Zeraora, good fast Pokemon. Clefable, best fairy in the game, pretty much. Excadrill, best steals, best spinner, and overall really good consistency. Milotic, good bulky water, I guess. And overall just really annoying. Dhelmise, I just wanted to use it, so I drafted it low. I mean, I already have the best spinner, but, you know, it doesn't hurt to have two, I guess. Tyranitar, just for Excadrill, good synergy, since Tyranitar, he took Tyranitar anyway, so I had to deal with Mega Tyranitar, and I think it's a pretty fire Pokemon anyway. Noivern, good consistent flying spam. Emboar, big damage. DOD and Glaceon just exist, I guess. Overall, I think it's really funny. But yeah, looking at my team, I'm really scared of the Volcanion coming, as it is just gonna click Steam Eruption through everything. Nidoking clicking whatever the fuck it wants on anything, really scary. Uxie just being able to wall my Excadrill in the end game, really scary there, and potentially running Foul Play, which it got, so really scared of that, for sure. And Banded Melmetal, which is always a menace, smacking everybody and everybody's teams around. So overall, very strong offensive Pokemon that I'm really scared of and wanted to try and adapt building around, right? So without further ado, let's go over my thought process on what I decided to bring week one. So first off is this nice Excadrill. If you get the nicknames, you get the nicknames. If you don't, you don't. Excadrill here is just meant to spam any of its stabs and just try and sweep in the end game, right? So we have Earthquake, Iron Head, Rapid Spin, Sword Stance, pretty standard set overall, for sure. But the main draw is that Sandrush outspeeding his Lopunny and outspeeding his entire team, including his own friendly fire Sand Abuser in Dracozolt, right? Because even if he chooses not to bring Tyranitar and try and sleep with Dracozolt, Excadrill always outspeeds. And the best part is I can run Adamant, meaning that I don't have to invest in speed with a Jolly Nature. So I can focus on big boy damage. And that's what I'm going to try and do, right? Big boy damage. Chople Berry in and of itself is for the Serena and the Lopunny, because Lopunny is a coin flip, whether or not I live a CC from full. It's a coin flip that I could be willing to take, right? Superpower from Melmetal, which is pretty prominent, and High Jump Kick from Serena, which I think is the most likely outcome from this, right? Because High Jump Kick will just completely fucking decimate me, and not Power Whip, because Power Whip will probably be to a KO, because Excadrill's massive, base 110 HP, so overall, I think it's pretty good as a Chople Berry, and decent words in item slot, just to trade off like a Sword Stance or anything else to just try and sweep. Right, I just have to be wary of Uxie in the end game because I'm not Multibreaker and cannot Earthquake it and cannot wall it. Right, so that's what I we got Zero Aura. And what Zero Aura allows me to do is just to fire off whatever, outspeed his entire team, and just deal damage, right? That's what I want to do, and that's what I'm going to do. So we are rocking 3 standard Plasma Fist knockoff CC, and Volt Switch for that nice clean momentum. And this week we are rocking Air Balloon, because Air Balloon has some decent utility in the aspect of it forces him not to click Earthquake on his prominent darts or Earth Power. On something like Melmetal, on something like Nidoking, right, I have an actual switch in, which doesn't look like it on my team. I know, crazy. Should everything get weakened. Volcanion not being able to click EP, even though I don't think it just clicks Steam anyway. Tyranitar, Dracozolt clicking EP, Earthquake, overall really good. Especially Dracozolt, because its forces a 2 Draco Meteor should it carry it, or Dragon Claw should it carry it, which is significantly weaker on something like Zero Aura. So, overall, Air Balloon is just a real good utility item, and I'm able to outspeed everything, so I can just fight off whatever the hell I want, whenever I want. So, that's why I'm running Air Balloon, and overall, new standard set, speed creeps a lot, and able to tank it, or able to just OHKO it back, no matter what, right? Up next, we got DOD, which is just meant to completely decimate defensively, right? It's meant to take whatever the fuck I need it to, whether that be a Volcanion in the endgame, or Nidoking in the endgame, or Tyranitar, or not Tyranitar as much, but Melmetal especially, because of the Rocky Helmet, and Pressure. Pressure allows me to have the PP from 8 to 4, and the Ballin Bash hits twice, but Rocky Helmet does 17%, does about a third in recoil, and based off damage I can adapt accordingly, whether or not it is banded, so that is good information, right? Rocky Helmet also allows me to just punish Lopunny really hard, which is pretty good, in my opinion. And we're rocking Psychic and Seismic Toss for attacking moves, and Spikes and Recover for utility. Spikes are just overall good hazards, especially when his only hazard removal is Volcanion and Serena, which he would probably have to rank Serena with Spin, if I had to guess, or Volcanion with the Fog, but I think Serena with Spin's more likely, and Psychic is just there for the Nidoking, because I definitely want Nidoking away from the field, away from clicking anything outside of, because if I don't have stand-up, Nidoking could be a massive problem. So, Psychic is just there to just chip it down instantly. Sometimes I could try and clean up, right? Clean up crew, and Seismic Toss is good consistent chip, and just getting everything 100 damage down, which is really good, right? Up next, Shoutout to Paige, but we got the nice clean Emboar set. The only thing I take credit for is with the Wisp and the speed investment. Other than that, it's all Paige, right? Emboar is just there because looking at offensive Emboar, it would do a lot of damage. So we're going to invert expectations and just make it defensive, which also works really well, considering he doesn't have a good, depending on his team, he doesn't have a great Emboar switch in the end game, right? Except if he brings Volcanion, of course, but whatever, right? And Will-O-Wisp is practically free, just because he doesn't, all his physical attackers hate Will-O-Wisp, right? Everything, Azumarill, Tyranitar, Dracozolt, Lopunny, they all hate that Will-O-Wisp. So being able to fire it off for free and bluffing offensive would be really good in the first iterations. So bluffing offenses and just having good utility moves overall. We're running Blaze instead of Reckless, because it's pretty much, Reckless isn't really useful here, because we're not running recoil. But Flame Charge, boost speed, low kick, more considerable damage, less on Lopunny, but more for Mel and Tyranitar, that'll just nuke them instantly, right? And it's overall decent. And we got Earthquake, which hits its entire team pretty well, besides Yuxi. So, other than Yuxi, this Emboar really just goes to town, right? And that's what I'm kind of hoping for, because it outspeeds everything except Lopunny for a Flame Charge. So, overall, a good defensive, offensive Pokemon that is able to really turn the table if necessary. Up next, we got our nice Mega Tyranitar, standard with Rocks. I have a bunch of speed and taunt. The reason why is because I want to speed creep Yggdrasil in case you like Yggdrasil with minimal speed, like 4 or so, in case he wants to just throw it in speed or whatever. Like if a 252, 252, 4, right? But this will allow them to outspeed Yggdrasil variants and click taunt before they get the rocks up, which is pretty useful, right? Allowing my hazard and denying theirs would be pretty useful for me. Just because it's free chip, and free chip is chip. And we got our own rocks here with a nice Earthquake Crunch, because again, those two types are just really good offensively against Yggdrasil's team, for sure. And they just do way too much. So, he has to really try and play around it. And last but certainly not least, we got Milotech, and Milotech is just there for Volcanion and Nidoking a little bit, to be honest, because it is a Spadef Milo with Scald, Flip Turn, Weather Ball, and Recover. It is worth noting that because I don't really have many options to deal with Volcanion, he could just go Volcanion and just like try and do shit, right? So that's what Weather Ball's there for. It's to punish Volcanion thinking it's safe, doing a clean 50%, and depending if he takes rocks or hazards, I'm able to see if it's specs or not, or if it's utility, and ultimately try and do a shit ton of damage to it, right? Because Volcanion gets no recovery, so any damage I get on it will stay for the game. Besides rest, but like, it's whatever if he's rest, then it's a move, right? It's a move slot I have to not worry about. So not having recovery is pretty solid. Or just being able to just like, no recovery on Volcanion, but I'm rambling on here, but what I'm just trying to say is Milo just does what it does. It catches things off guard, gives me momentum, fires off Skull Burns, and just heals back up to full whenever it wants. Good thing is, if I get paralyzed or Steam Eruption burned, which ultimately I think was going to happen, I would be able to check a lot better too, Lock and Melmetal. So overall, I think it's a really decent Pokemon for this matchup. And with that, I will cut straight to the battle. Yeah. Alright, and I am back. So here's the battle team preview, which honestly doesn't have a lot of the threats I was considering, to be honest, so I'm feeling a little bit more relieved, but I'm also a little bit terrified, right? Because if I don't exactly predict something, then I don't know, I just feel like it's a little bit off, at least in my eyes. Like, I didn't see Volcanion, Yggdrasil, or Nidoking, all the threats I was really concerned about, so, you know, a little bit of worry there, but not as much, because it's not as offensively, like, present, I guess. The one thing I am really a little bit concerned about is that Azumarill, because he decided to bring Azumarill to check Excadrill late game, which I have to try and deal with over the course of the game. So the longer Azumarill's on the field, the more it's just a real pain in the ass, I feel. Besides that, everything is pretty much else as expected. He didn't rely on me bringing my sand for my Mega Tyranitar, so he brought his own Tyranitar. So, without further ado, let me remove the display and show off the matches here. So, yeah, I'm so good. I clicked it the first time. I didn't click an accidental button. Turn 1, I decided to leave Emboar, because looking at Emboar in his team, he doesn't really have the best switch-in, and if I could bluff offensive Emboar, that'd be really fucking good, right? Because there's only... And I could just get a free Willow here, right? Because look at his team, and there's no special attackers at all, besides, like, potential mixed Dracozolt. So a Will-O-Wisp here is absolutely invaluable to his entire team. So he decides to Mega Evolve, which makes sense. U-turn, which makes sense, because he doesn't want to stay in, and he actually goes Azumarill. And this right here is fucking huge, because now Azumarill no longer checks Excadrill, so Excadrill is free to Rampage for the entire game, in the end game. So I'm really happy about that. I decided to go Milo in case he wants to click Liquidate and just try and get rid of Emboar, because Emboar is really strong in the end game. I could see him doing that. But instead he decides to click Knockoff, which is smart play. I mean, I don't think I risk Emboar, like, at all in this early game. And then I decide to flip turn to see whether or not he wants to stay in. I'm pretty sure this is banded at this point, based off that damage. And Milotic isn't as useful, just because it doesn't really... It's a Spadef tank to a Phys-Def team, or a physical attacking team. Even though it has good natural bulk, I don't really see it doing as much. So, I'm comfortable getting the leftovers knocked off. I go Tyranitar, just because it's free rocks at this point. It's free rocks, so I can't really complain about free rocks. He doubles Lop, I get my rocks up. Then I decide to switch in DOD, just because I want to see what this does. And he actually makes some really smart prep with Toxic, so didn't really expect that, but it's really good prep nonetheless. I just wanted to showcase that, because I thought it was just really neat. I know it seems obvious, but I didn't see it obvious in the battle. I go Emboar on the potential U-turn, because I don't want to take damage on DOD. He goes Azumarill, which is fine. Now, I decided to go Milo, because again, I'm not risking Emboar at this point in the game, because looking at Emboar's team, look at Emboar in the endgame matchup, it's fucking phenomenal. It does way too much damage, and it sweeps, right? As soon as Lopunny drops, at this point, it outspeeds everything, and just kills it, which is really funny and really good after a Flame Charge. So, I decided to go Milo. He decides to protect that and go Serena, which is good on his part, but I also see that it's boots, because he did not take the Hazards chip. So my guess it's Hazards Utility, or Offensive Hazards Utility, right? Just trying to remove the hazards and stop me from stacking. Which, good on him, it was one of his 2 removers, besides Volcanion. So, it's whatever. I decide to punish a Rapid Spin by going DOD with the Rocky Helmet, just to apply some pressure. And I do want to see if this is a knockoff variant, so I decide to stay in and risk my helmet, just because I want to see if it's knockoff and whether or not it's offensive. But here he decides to switch out into Tyranitar, which makes sense, as I get my Spike up. So Spike will be pretty nice. It's not rocks, but it's basically diet rocks. We go Milo on his rocks, and I decide to keep Milo a little bit healthy just to see what this Tyranitar wants to do. But he actually doubles Melmetal, so good on his part. I see that's leftovers and not banded Melmetal, so that's really good for me as he fires off a Toxic. I'm not really too concerned with Milo at this point, as I previously established. It's more Spadef oriented to a no special attacker team, so I really don't see as much utility to keep it. You know? I really just don't. So, I decided to flip turn, but he actually manages to protect. And I realize, oh, it's really just that bulky, huh? I decided to fire off a Scald here. The reason why I just want to fire off that Scald is just for a potential burn. And again, I'm more comfortable stacking Milo. I wanted to flip turn out to potentially bring out DOD on a double iron or just something, or just click toss, right? But I didn't really have like the best free switch in. He decides to EQ, which does practically nothing due to Marvel Scale. And I decided to double DOD here. The reason why is because if he wants to double iron on a potential switch, I can punish it. Because I didn't think Milo staying in was obvious, and if he protected, I could just click toss and sack my DOD, because he'd have to double iron to kill. But here he makes a very good offensive double into Dracozolt, and at this point I'm wondering what it's worth to keep DOD, and the answer is no. Right, I already got my Spike up, and I could potentially get rocks later. I just want the chip on the Bolt Beak. I'm not risking him clicking Draco onto Zeraora, because he can, and if I pop Balloon, that's really bad, because then I don't really have as good of a switch in. So here I decided to go Excadrill, because Excadrill always outspeeds. But the unfortunate thing is, I don't want to take Aqua Jet damage from Azumarill, because I want to eat a High Jump Kick later on from Serena should he carry it. So here I just decide to Quake for the kill, because Spin will not kill Azumarill at this point. So he goes Azu. I click Earthquake. It drops, as expected. He goes Lop here. I decide to sack Milo, just because it's, again, pretty much useless right now. And now I decide to go Zeraora for the revenge, because it's always faster. I reveal my Balloon, which is whatever. He goes Mill. The crit on the Scald didn't matter, because I would have just clicked CC afterward, and he doesn't have the best switch into the Zeraora either. So, it's whatever. Right, he goes Serena. I decide to click Knockoff in case I get hazards up with Tyranitar. And That's my main reason for that. But I also figure out that based off that damage of knockoff, he's 100% defensive. He's not offensively invested. I decided to go Tar just to try and see what he wants to do, but also to sack it, I guess. Because if he U-turns, I pretty much lost my Tyranitar, which, whatever. And if he Power Whipped, I basically kept my Tyranitar and got rocks. But it's not the end of the world, because Excadrill could always clean up, right? So I figured it was worth the risk of just freeing up rocks. As he actually just goes Lop, and I just decide to sack Tar, because I have no good switch in. I mean, I do have Emboar, but it doesn't take 2. It only takes 1. So I decided to go Exca. I click Iron Head first for the kill. I'm expecting him to go Serena here, and he actually goes Tyranitar. And this screen, well, I guess that spoils it. But I was really sussed out by that Tyranitar. Just because it coming in meant it was probably a berry. Whether or not it was Steel or Ground Berry was a 50-50, right? Because if it was Steel Berry, I would have been fucked, and if it was Ground Berry, I would have been fucked. So I decided to contemplate what is it, because I do not expect him to go Tyranitar, right? If you have a defensive Serena with HJK, he should have gone into it, right? Which also tells me that Lopunny, or that, well, not Lopunny, that Serena is not HJK. So that's really useful info. But I take the 50-50 on Quake, because if he's Babbery, then there's no way I kill ever, and I have to rely on a flinch. Earthquake is just more consistent damage for the Emboar endgame, right? Because Emboar is also really good. So he is revealed to be Shuka, as I feared, but he actually clicks Superpower, which I didn't... I mean, it makes sense on Team Preview and Team Building, but I just didn't think it would click Superpower for whatever reason. I don't know. I'm just dumb, but... But Excadrill manages to live thanks to the Chople for HJK only. So, really funny how that turned out, but it ended up saving my ass. I decided to click Iron Head, because he has no good switching, and down it goes. Here he goes Serena. I actually decide to switch out Excadrill, and the reason why is because I know Excadrill outspeeds everything. Like, I know Zeraora does too, but Zeraora is less useful, right? Just because it doesn't really do a lot of damage to Dracozole, and it doesn't really do a lot of damage to Serena. So I decide to send in Zeraora. Send in Zeraora here, because I know Excadrill can win, right? As long as I get the chip on Serena, this just wins. And because I know he's defensive, I decide to take a gamble whether or not I am actually faster, because I'm super fast Zeraora, and he is slow Serena. So even with the speed boost, I'm able to get a nice CC of damage off onto Serena, and down that goes to a Power Whip, which I'm more than comfortable with. And now Emboar gets to really wreck house with Flame Charge, boosting speed, Earthquake, tanking hit, and I could just afford it at this point. I don't need to risk a Will-O-Miss. So yeah, I ate that like a fucking champ. I could have clicked Flame Charge here because of Blaze, but I just didn't because Earthquake is just whatever. It didn't matter. And so that's pretty much the game, honestly. Overall, I think I did pretty solid in this Weather Ward matchup. I definitely think I could have prepped a little bit better, but at the same time, he didn't bring any of the offensive threats. So all my offensive threat prep was kind of just nulled for, like, you know, the offensive threats he brought. And he brought more defenses, which I think allowed Emboar to just wreck house in the endgame. Zeraora was pretty nice, and Excadrill was pretty much a hard carry too. Especially in the endgame, where they both outsped everything, and I could just click moves, especially with Serena at like no percent. After that, close combat. So with that, that's week 1 overall. GG's to Yggdrasil. Really good game. I know you talked about why you didn't bring Yuxi, but I still think it should have come. I guess that's just my opinion, right? Live and learn, I guess. But yeah, thank you for watching. Make sure to let me know how you enjoyed it, whether or not by leaving a like or leaving a comment, because YouTube is just 1984 all dislikes and doesn't really allow constructive criticism. I know, crazy. Constructive criticism helps people improve? What? Who would have guessed? I would have never guessed. I'm on a tangent here. I don't know what the fuck I'm saying. Goodbye.